There will come times when we lack the motivation to pursue any form of photography. It would feel as if the creativity inside of us has been consumed by thoughts of insecurity, of incompetence, of being an imposter in a world where photography is increasingly seeming like a pointless pursuit. In those moments, we kick ourselves even more for not possessing the willpower to do creative work, ending up in a spiraling pit devoid of happiness and inspiration. My goal today is not to tell you to just go and shoot. What I want to do is share with you my feelings about my photography, why I've slumped into an era of not going out for weeks when I used to go out almost every other evening, and the reflection it took to get over that, with the hope that you can also learn from my experience. So about a year ago, when I first started photography, everything was very new to me. I would take my camera out any moment that I got and would go walking maybe 15-20 minutes at a time just to take pictures. And as the year progressed and my photography progressed as well, I started to go out more and more, especially during golden hours. So wake up before work, go out, take photos. After work, go out, take photos. And that kind of continued till about a couple of months ago, I think, when winter kind of hit and my motivation drastically dropped. So I've reflected on that quite a bit, and I think there are a couple of reasons why I think I've struggled to go out and take more photos. And so let's start off with the first one, which is just completely feeling uninspired. So for those of you who know a little bit about my photography, you've probably seen that a lot of my photos are of local landscapes, just because that is what I've tried to focus on more since it's harder for me to travel. But the problem with local landscapes is that it's not as easy to go out and take pictures in the same vein as those that you might have seen online, and those that might have actually motivated you to start taking pictures of nature. So right now what I'm feeling is a lack of inspiration because I feel that I've pretty much explored everything there is to explore in the local landscapes. And all the forests are dead, all the leaves are gone, there's no interesting colors that we saw in the fall, fogs don't happen as often, and snow this year has also been a little bit lackluster. So there's no good condition, there's no interesting subject that I can think of that I haven't already shot. And so just all of that combined makes it feel like if I go out, I'm not going to get any good photos anyways, so why even bother? So for this, I think one of the things that I've tried to focus on is if I can't go out and feel inspired by landscapes just because I feel a lack of life in them, then maybe I need to try and focus a lot more on things that I usually don't shoot, just so that I can get my creativity flowing a little bit. And so I have been trying to go out more to spaces with people in them, which I've generally avoided for photos, and try to take photos that I normally wouldn't take just because most of my photos and most of my focus has been on nature. I went to Florida recently, and even though that was a travel trip and I would expect everything to be new and exciting and be inspired everywhere, I also knew that I wouldn't be able to focus on landscape photography much. And so what I decided to do was use that as kind of an excuse, but as a justification for trying something different. So I shot a lot more street photography. I shot a lot more abstract or art as well, trying to be a little bit more creative, trying to take photos that I normally wouldn't take. But I think that also opened up a lot more ways that I can now take photos. It allowed me to see spaces in a different way than I had normally seen before. Because my focus had been primarily on landscape photography, I had gotten used to seeing in a certain type of way and used to trying to compose in a certain type of way. Sure, some rules of composition, of aesthetics stay the same, but the life of the space can vary depending on what you're trying to shoot. And so I found that to be particularly interesting. And so I think right now, with the winter, when there isn't any motivation to go out and take photos of nature, I should try and focus a lot more on maybe just going into town and seeing what I can find, seeing light in a different way, seeing spaces and people within those spaces behaving in those spaces, and using that as a way to kind of catalyze my inspiration for photography again. Sometimes with that lack of inspiration, we tend to then go and try and gather inspiration from other photographers, looking at their photos, looking at the different spaces that they've taken photos in, to try and feel a little bit more inspired to go out and make photos. But for me, sometimes that can turn into something a little bit more ugly, where I start to feel a little bit more jealous of the photos. I start to feel a little bit more jealous of the photographers and their ability to create photos. And then I end up justifying it to myself by saying, they're probably professional landscape photographers. They have the time and the energy and the ability to go out and take photos, plus they have better gear. And so all of this combined tries to justify to myself why it's okay for them to be making the photos, and so I shouldn't try and feel jealous. But that way of thinking, I think, is problematic in of itself, just to not feel jealous, because I think it's not fair to them. They have made sacrifices that I'm not willing to make because of certain values that I want to keep in my life, because I want to prioritize certain things over others. But just reinforcing that idea, though, is not enough to actually get me to go out and take photos, because I've only just nullified the jealousy that I felt. I haven't become more inspired. And so what I found is, rather than just looking at other people's work, I should try and focus on my own photos and look at the past and see what I actually enjoy. Those are the photos that we can see where our creativity has shined, and those can serve a better indication of where to try and get inspiration. I think I can easily fall into this trap of trying to just create more and more and more without actually taking the time to enjoy what I've already created. And I think for me, it becomes a very cathartic process to relive the experiences of those photos and the enjoyment I felt when making those photos, just by going back and looking at them with intentionality. Another thing that I try and do with that is to see my progression through the time. So if I started last year, then see the type of photos that I consider to be the best at that point, and then compare them to the type of photos that I consider to be good right now. And just see that progression, because that progression is an indication of what has inspired you and kept you motivated to keep going and progressing in photography. Even with my social media on Instagram, there's a reason that I haven't deleted any of the photos that now, looking back at it, I can tell they're terrible. And so many other photographers end up deleting some of their photos from the past just because they feel like they no longer showcases their talent. But for me, it showcases something else. For me, it shows my story, not just to other people, but to myself as a photographer. And that is what inspires me to go out and make more photos, to grow as a photographer. I think a lot of us have this fear of sharing the bad parts of photography, where we go out to take photos for several hours and come back with almost nothing, or come back with photos which we just end up deleting anyways. And I think for me as well, this fear translates to not showing people any form of regression, not showing people any form of lack of ability to make better photos than I've made before. I don't want to publish or share any photos which might seem as bad. So if someone were to go on my gallery on social media or my website, they wouldn't see any photos later in the timeline which seemed worse than the ones before them. And so if we don't make mistakes, that just means that we are stagnant in what we're trying to do. We're not trying anything new creatively. We're not trying to do something different than what we've done before. And I think to be genuine and authentic to yourself as a photographer, it's crucial to try and change the way you take photos from time to time, just to see what it is that you are capable of doing. And so there's this type of exploitation gap where you're trying to exploit your previous creative process as much as possible to create photos that you've become known for, to create photos that you're comfortable with. And this fear really impedes that exploration. I think your audience, or those people who enjoy your photos, enjoy it because you show them something different. You show them your authentic self. And there are a lot of different sides to you which you have yet to explore, different sides to your photography, different sides to how you think creatively, how you see the world, that just haven't been shown. What I've been trying to do is go out without the intention of actually taking any photos. I've been trying to go out just to explore nature, just to see in a different way. And if I don't have the intention to take photos, then I'm not trying to see for something specific. I'm not trying to look at the world and try and fit that into something that I've already taken a photo of. If I keep going out and not trying to get a photo every single time and just being in the moment, being intentional with the shots that I get, I'll be a lot more happy. I know that if I go out and take photos that don't really interest me, but I'm trying to take them just so that I can have some photo, yeah, I'll come back, not really like it, feel even more demotivated to go out and end up deleting all the photos. So my approach is to go out, take the photo only when you actually think that it'll be a photo worth keeping. And at the other times, just go and enjoy the scenery, the nature, enjoy the hike, be inspired by the little things, look out for interesting subjects you can come back to, things like that. I didn't end up taking any photos, and I think that's perfectly fine. I think what I was trying to do was trying to bring up my motivation to go out at the same time of looking at spaces differently, looking at nature in a way that I haven't looked at before. Creativity isn't like any other task that we're used to doing. We can't just sit down for a dedicated amount of time to finish the task. Usually, creativity requires a chunk of time to be allotted where you can first upfront spend some time thinking and cultivating the thing that you want to do. So for photography, this involves going out to the spaces to feel inspired by light, feel inspired by shapes and compositions without even worrying about trying to take photos. And so forget about what everyone else is doing, forget about what you yourself have done in the past and what other people have responded to. Go out, look at the world, and make something beautiful.